Arizona Territory. September 1887. The screams of dying horses echoed through Devil's Canyon as smoke filled the crimson evening sky. Dr. Evangeline Morrison clutched her swollen belly, watching her life's work burn in the overturned stagecoach below. Blood trickled from her forehead where the bandit's bullet had grazed her during the attack. 6 months pregnant and stranded in the unforgiving wilderness, she pressed deeper into the mountain cave that had become her sanctuary. Outside, wolves howled their ancient song of hunger, and somewhere in the darkness, footsteps approached. She had escaped the Anderson gang's robbery, but death still stalked her through these haunted peaks. The morning had started with such promise. Evangeline had been traveling from Denver to the mining town of Copper Ridge, carrying precious medical supplies to treat a cholera outbreak. As one of the few female physicians west of the Mississippi, she had grown accustomed to suspicious stares and whispered doubts about her abilities. But the people of Copper Ridge had specifically requested her services after hearing about her success treating the epidemic in Silver Creek the previous winter. Her husband Thomas would have forbidden this journey had he known about her condition. The baby wasn't due until February, and she had convinced herself that 6 months along was still safe for travel. Dr. Morrison had delivered dozens of babies and knew her own body well enough to recognize the signs of trouble. So far, everything seemed normal despite the rigors of frontier travel. The stagecoach had been making good time through the mountain passes when the first shots rang out. Evangeline remembered the driver, a weathered man named Murphy, shouting warnings about riders approaching fast from the North Ridge. She had been reading her medical journals when the coach lurched violently to one side. "Bandits," Murphy had yelled, cracking his whip over the team of 6 horses. Anderson gang by the look of him. The Anderson gang was legendary throughout the territory for their ruthless attacks on stagecoaches and supply trains. Led by Black Jack Anderson, they showed no mercy to travelers and had allegedly killed over 30 people in the past 2 years. Evangeline had heard the stories in every saloon and general store from Denver to Santa Fe. The chase had lasted nearly an hour through winding canyon roads. Murphy proved himself a skilled driver, navigating treacherous turns and steep grades, while rifle shots echoed off the canyon walls. Evangeline and the other 2 passengers, a traveling salesman named Brewster, and an elderly woman called Mrs. Patterson, huddled on the floor of the coach as bullets splintered the wooden sides. Everything changed when they reached Devil's Canyon. The road here was little more than a narrow ledge carved into the cliff face, with a sheer drop of 300 feet to the rocky canyon floor. Murphy was pushing the horses hard, trying to reach the relay station at Copper Creek when the lead horse stumbled. Evangeline would never forget the sickening sensation of the coach tilting sideways, then rolling over the edge. She remembered Mrs. Patterson's final scream, cut short when the coach crushed her against the rocks. Brewster had been thrown clear, but landed headfirst on a boulder. Only Evangeline had managed to crawl away from the wreckage, driven by an instinct to protect the life growing inside her. The bandits had descended into the canyon like vultures, searching the bodies and rifling through scattered luggage. Evangeline had dragged herself behind a stand of pine trees, watching in horror as they shot the wounded horses and set fire to anything they couldn't carry. Black Jack Anderson himself had stood over Murphy's broken body, laughing as he counted the coins from the strong box. "Shame about the doc," one of the bandits had said. "Heard she was pretty for a sawbones." "Dead is dead," Anderson had replied. "Let the coyotes have what's left." They had ridden away as the sun began to set, leaving Evangeline alone with the dead and the gathering darkness. Using her medical training, she had assessed her own injuries: a concussion, several deep cuts, and possible cracked ribs. More importantly, the baby seemed unharmed. She could still feel movement, and there was no bleeding that would indicate serious complications. The cave had been a stroke of luck, hidden behind a curtain of juniper branches about 50 feet up the canyon wall. It provided shelter from both the elements and any predators drawn by the smell of blood. Evangeline had managed to salvage her medical bag from the wreckage, along with a canteen and some hardtack biscuits from Brewster's pack. Now, as she sat in the cave's mouth watching the last light fade from the sky, she tried to calculate her chances of survival. The nearest settlement was Copper Creek, at least 15 miles through rough terrain. In her condition, such a journey would be impossible. Her only hope was that someone would come looking for the missing stagecoach. The sound of approaching footsteps made her heart race. She pressed herself against the cave wall, trying to become invisible in the shadows. The steps were slow and deliberate, not the hurried pace of the bandits. A voice called out from the darkness below. "Hello, anyone alive down there?" The voice was deep and gentle, with the accent of a man who had spent years in the saddle. Evangeline remained silent, unsure whether to trust this stranger. Too many people in the territory would think nothing of robbing a defenseless woman, pregnant or not. "I saw the smoke from the ridge," the voice continued. "Name's Nathaniel Cross. I'm a healer, not a bandit. If you're hurt, I can help." A healer. Evangeline felt a flutter of hope. In the frontier territories, healers were often as skilled as trained physicians, having learned their craft through necessity and experience. Many were former soldiers who had treated battlefield wounds, or men who had studied under Indian medicine men. "I'm here," she called out softly, in the cave above. "You." She heard him scrambling up the rocky slope, his boots scraping against stone. A few minutes later, a tall figure appeared at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the starlit sky. He was leading a horse and carrying what appeared to be medical supplies. "Ma'am, I'm coming in slow," he said. "Don't want to startle you." Nathaniel Cross was not what Evangeline had expected. Most frontier healers were grizzled old men with wild beards and questionable hygiene. This man appeared to be in his mid-30s, with shoulder-length dark hair and intelligent eyes. He wore the practical clothing of a cowboy, leather chaps, a worn shirt, and a hat that had seen better days, but his movements were careful and precise as he approached. "Lord Almighty," he whispered when he saw her condition. "You're with child, 6 months along." Evangeline confirmed. "Are you really a healer?" "Yes, ma'am. Learned from my grandfather, who was a surgeon in the war between the states. Also spent time with the Apache, learning their ways with herbs and healing." He knelt beside her, his hands gentle as he examined the cut on her forehead. "This needs cleaning. What's your name?" "Dr. Evangeline Morrison." Nathaniel's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You're a doctor, a real doctor?" "Graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania in 1882. She said with a trace of pride. "I was traveling to Copper Ridge to treat a cholera outbreak." "Well, I'll be damned. Begging your pardon, ma'am." He opened his medical kit, revealing an impressive array of instruments and supplies. "Looks like we're both in the healing business. How are you feeling? Any pain in your belly?" Evangeline appreciated his direct, professional manner. "Some tenderness in my ribs, but the baby seems fine. I can still feel movement, and there's no bleeding. Good. That's real good." Nathaniel began cleaning her wounds with practiced efficiency. "I'm going to be honest with you, Dr. Morrison. You can't stay here much longer. This cave has been used by bears, and they'll be coming back as the weather turns cold. Plus, those bandits might return to see if they missed anything valuable. I know, but I can't make the journey to town in my condition. You won't have to." Nathaniel's hands never paused in their work. "My cabin is only about 3 miles from here, hidden in a box canyon. It's warm, secure, and I've got everything needed to see you through to when the baby comes." Evangeline studied his face in the dim light. There was something trustworthy about Nathaniel Cross, a steadiness that reminded her of her father. "Why would you help a stranger, and why are you out here alone?" "As for helping, that's what healers do. As for being alone," he paused, a shadow crossing his features. "Let's just say I prefer the mountains to towns these days." There was pain in his voice, old wounds that hadn't quite healed. Evangeline recognized the sound. She had heard it in her own voice. After losing her first child 2 years ago, everyone carried secrets in the frontier territories, and she decided not to press for details. "All right, Mr. Cross, I accept your offer. Call me Nathaniel, and we'll take it slow and easy. No need to rush." He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they made their way to his horse. The animal was a sturdy bay gelding, with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor. Nathaniel fashioned a makeshift saddle from blankets and rope. ensuring Evangeline would be as comfortable as possible for the journey. "What about the others?" she asked, looking down at the wreckage. "I'll come back tomorrow and see to proper burials. Tonight, we need to get you somewhere safe." The ride to Nathaniel's cabin took nearly 2 hours through winding mountain trails. He walked beside the horse, one hand on the reins and the other ready to steady Evangeline if she began to slip. They spoke little during the journey, both focused on navigating the treacherous path in near total darkness. The cabin appeared suddenly in a clearing surrounded by towering pines. It was larger than Evangeline had expected, built from solid logs with a stone chimney and glass windows, a luxury in this remote location. Smoke rose from the chimney, and warm light glowed from within. "Someone's here," Evangeline observed. "My partner, Joshua," Nathaniel explained. "He's Apache, but don't let that worry you. Best tracker and hunter in the territory, and he knows healing herbs better than anyone." An Indian emerged from the cabin as they approached. He was a man of perhaps 40 years, with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent his life outdoors. His clothing was a mixture of traditional Apache garments and practical frontier wear. "You found the woman from the stagecoach," Joshua said in perfect English. "She carries life within her. Dr. Evangeline Morrison, meet Joshua Crowfeather," Nathaniel said. He saw the smoke too and figured someone might need help. Joshua nodded respectfully to Evangeline. "You are welcome in our home, Doctor. The spirits have guided you to safety." Inside, the cabin was warm and surprisingly well appointed. There were 2 bedrooms, a main living area with a stone fireplace, and what appeared to be a complete medical facility in one corner. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, medical instruments, and jars of herbs and medicines. "This is quite impressive," Evangeline said, settling into a comfortable chair near the fire. "We've been here 3 years, Nathaniel explained. Started as a temporary camp but kept adding improvements. Joshua knows where to find everything we need in the mountains, and I handle the medical work." "What kind of medical work?" "Miners, mostly from the camps scattered through these mountains. Also cowboys, trappers, the occasional traveler like yourself. Word gets around when someone needs doctoring." Joshua prepared a meal of venison stew and cornbread while Nathaniel continued, examining Evangeline's injuries. Her ribs were bruised but not broken, and the concussion seemed mild. Most importantly, the baby's heartbeat was strong and regular. "When are you due?" Nathaniel asked. "Early February. I think. It's hard to be precise without proper medical instruments. We'll manage." Joshua's grandmother was a midwife, and I've delivered my share of babies. Between the 3 of us, your little one should arrive safely. That night, Evangeline slept in a real bed for the first time in weeks. The cabin was warm and secure, with the comforting sounds of the wilderness outside. For the first time since the attack, she allowed herself to hope that both she and her baby might survive this ordeal. The first snowfall came 2 weeks after Evangeline's arrival at the cabin. She woke to find the world transformed, covered in a blanket of white that sparkled like diamonds in the morning sun. From her bedroom window, she could see Joshua checking his trap lines while Nathaniel split firewood near the barn. Her pregnancy was progressing normally. Though the baby seemed more active than usual, she attributed this to the clean mountain air and the peace of their hidden valley. The stress of city life and her medical practice in Denver had taken its toll. But here she felt truly relaxed for the first time in years. Nathaniel had proven himself to be remarkably skilled for someone without formal medical training. His knowledge of anatomy rivaled that of many trained physicians, and his diagnostic abilities were sharp and intuitive. When she asked about his background, he revealed that his grandfather had not only been a Civil War surgeon, but had also trained at Harvard Medical School before the war. "He taught me everything he knew," Nathaniel explained one evening as they reviewed medical texts by the fire. Said the frontier needed healers more than the cities did. Course, he never expected me to end up hiding in the mountains. "Why are you hiding?" Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I was a town doctor once, in a place called Willow Creek. Had a practice, a house, even a woman I planned to marry. Then cholera hit the town, just like what you were going to treat. In Copper Ridge, he paused, his jaw tightening with old pain. I couldn't save them. Not the woman I loved, not her family, not even the children. Lost 37 people in 6 weeks, including Martha and our unborn child. She was about as far along as you are now. Evangeline felt her heart ache for him. Cholera is hard to treat under the best circumstances. In a frontier town with limited supplies, the townspeople didn't see it that way. They needed someone to blame, and the doctor was an easy target. Had to leave in the middle of the night when they started talking about a hanging. That's terrible. You were trying to help them. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. Nathaniel stood and walked to the window. Been up here ever since, taking care of miners and cowboys. Joshua found me about a year later, half dead from drinking and feeling sorry for myself. Probably saved my life. Joshua looked up from where he was preparing medicines at the table. The spirits brought us together for a purpose. Perhaps that purpose was to help Dr. Morrison. Perhaps Nathaniel agreed. Either way, I'm glad we found you when we did. As the weeks passed, Evangeline learned more about her unlikely companions. Joshua had been a scout for the army before the Apache wars ended, but had grown disillusioned with the treatment of his people. He had studied with tribal medicine men and learned the healing properties of hundreds of different plants and herbs. White man's medicine is powerful, he told Evangeline one afternoon as they gathered medicinal roots near a frozen stream. But it treats only the body. Apache medicine treats the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. I'm beginning to understand that, Evangeline replied. In medical school, we were taught to focus on symptoms and diseases. But here, with you and Nathaniel, I'm learning to see patients as complete human beings. Your baby will be born between 2 worlds, Joshua observed, the world of white medicine and the world of natural healing. That child will be blessed with great wisdom. Evangeline placed a protective hand on her growing belly. The baby was due in less than 2 months, and she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Giving birth in a remote mountain cabin was not what she had planned, but she trusted her companions completely. Their peaceful routine was interrupted in early December, when a desperate miner arrived at the cabin. His name was Pete Williams, and he had ridden hard for 2 days from a gold camp called Eagle's Nest. "Doc, you gotta come with me," he gasped, barely able to stand from exhaustion. "We got cave-in at the mine. 3 men trapped, and 2 more hurt bad. One of 'em's got his leg crushed, something awful." Nathaniel was already gathering his medical supplies. "How far is Eagle's Nest?" 6 hours hard riding, but the trail's treacherous with all the snow. "I'll go," Evangeline said, struggling to get up from her chair. "No, you won't," Nathaniel said firmly. "You're too close to your time, and the journey would be too dangerous. Those men need a surgeon. You're skilled, but I have the training to handle complex trauma cases, and I won't risk losing you and the baby for the sake of men who chose to work in dangerous mines." Evangeline felt a flash of anger. "That's not your decision to make. I'm a doctor, and my oath requires me to help those in need." Joshua stepped between them, his calm presence diffusing the tension. "There's another way. Nathaniel goes to the mine camp. I stay here with Dr. Morrison. If the baby comes early, I know enough to help. If the men at the mine need surgery, Nathaniel can send word and we decide then." It was a reasonable compromise, though Evangeline hated feeling helpless. Nathaniel packed his supplies and left with Pete Williams within the hour, promising to return as soon as possible. "He's a good man," Joshua said after they had gone, "but he carries too much guilt from his past. He fears losing another woman and child." "I'm not his woman, and this isn't his child. Are you certain of that?" Evangeline started to object, then stopped. Over the past 2 months, she had grown closer to Nathaniel than she cared to admit. He was kind, intelligent, and shared her passion for healing, but she was a married woman. Even if Thomas seemed like a distant memory from another life. "My husband is waiting for me in Denver," she said quietly. "Your husband let you travel alone while carrying his child. Apache man would never do such a thing." Joshua's words stung because they held truth. Thomas had been focused on his law practice when she left Denver. barely looking up from his papers when she announced her travel plans. He had married her, more for her medical degree than for love, seeing the advantages of having a physician wife in their social circle. 3 days later, a young cowboy arrived with a message from Nathaniel. The mine rescue had been successful, but one of the injured men needed surgery to save his crushed leg. Nathaniel was requesting guidance on the proper procedure. "I have to go," Evangeline announced after reading the message. "The baby could come any day," Joshua warned. "Then we'll have to hope it waits. I can't let a man lose his leg when I might be able to save it." Joshua studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "I will prepare the horses, but we go carefully, and if you feel any signs of labor, we stop immediately." The journey to Eagle's Nest took 8 hours through treacherous mountain trails. Evangeline rode side saddle on Joshua's gentle mare, stopping frequently to rest and check on the baby's condition. By the time they reached the mining camp, she was exhausted but determined. Eagle's Nest was a collection of rough cabins and tents scattered around the entrance to a played-out gold mine. The men lived hard lives, working dangerous claims in hopes of striking it rich when they saw a pregnant woman ride into camp. Their rough faces showed amazement and respect. "Doc Morrison." Nathaniel rushed to help her down from the horse. "You shouldn't have come. Show me the patient," she said. Simply, the injured miner was a young Irishman named Patrick O'Brien. His left leg had been crushed when a support beam collapsed. An infection was already setting in. Without proper surgery, he would certainly lose the limb and possibly his life. Evangeline examined the wound carefully, noting the extent of the damage. The tibia and fibula are both fractured, but the bones can be set. "The bigger problem is this infection. We need to clean out all the dead tissue and debris." "I was hoping you'd say that," Nathaniel said. "I've been keeping the wound clean, but I wasn't sure about operating." They worked together for the next 4 hours, with Joshua assisting and the other miners taking turns holding lanterns for light. Evangeline directed the surgery while Nathaniel handled the more delicate procedures. It was the first time they had worked as a true medical team, and their skills complemented each other perfectly. "There," Evangeline said finally, tying off the last suture. "The leg should heal properly if we can prevent further infection." Patrick O'Brien would walk again, though with a permanent limp. More importantly, he would live to see his family in Ireland again. The miners passed a hat and collected nearly $100 in gold dust as payment for the surgery. "We can't accept this," Evangeline protested. "It's too much." "Mum, you saved Patty's life," said an old prospector named Jake. "Besides, we hear you got troubles of your own. What with being widowed and all." Evangeline glanced at Nathaniel in confusion. "Widowed? I had to tell them something," he said quietly. Figured it was easier than explaining the truth. The ride back to the cabin took place during a snowstorm that had blown in from the north. Joshua led the way, following trails that were barely visible in the swirling snow. Evangeline huddled against Nathaniel on his horse, grateful for his warmth and steady presence. They were still 2 hours from home when Evangeline felt the first contraction. "Stop," she gasped, doubling over in pain. Nathaniel pulled the horse to a halt. "What is it?" "The baby's coming." Joshua was beside them in seconds, his experienced eyes taking in the situation. "How far apart are the pains?" That was the first one, but it was strong. Another contraction hit 15 minutes later, then another 10 minutes after that. The labor was progressing rapidly, too rapidly for them to reach the cabin safely. "There's a line shack about a mile ahead," Joshua said. "Cowboys use it during roundup season. It will have to do." The shack was little more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was dry and relatively warm. Joshua quickly built a fire while Nathaniel prepared clean cloths and boiled water. Evangeline tried to stay calm, drawing on her medical training to assess her own condition. "The baby's in a hurry," she announced after another strong contraction. "This won't take long." Nathaniel knelt beside the makeshift bed they had created from blankets and saddles. "Tell me what to do. You've delivered babies before. Just trust your instincts." What followed was the most intense and beautiful experience of Evangeline's life, with Nathaniel coaching her through each contraction and Joshua chanting soft Apache prayers, she brought her daughter into the world just as the snowstorm began to clear. "She's perfect," Nathaniel whispered, holding the tiny baby with tears streaming down his face. "Absolutely perfect." Evangeline reached for her daughter, marveling at the small miracle in her arms. The baby had dark hair and bright blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. "What will you call her?" Joshua asked. Evangeline looked at the two men who had become her family over the past months. They had saved her life, protected her, and now helped bring her daughter safely into the world. There was only one name that seemed appropriate. "Hope," she said softly. "Her name is Hope." Spring came early to the mountains that year. With wildflowers blooming in the hidden valley by late March, Evangeline sat outside the cabin, watching Hope sleep in a cradle that Nathaniel had carved from pine wood. At 2 months old, the baby was healthy and growing rapidly, with her father's dark hair and her mother's determination. The question that had been hanging over them all winter could no longer be avoided. What would happen when the snows melted completely and the mountain passes reopened? Evangeline knew she would have to make a choice that would affect all their lives. "Letter came for you," Nathaniel said, approaching from the barn where he had been tending to the horses. Joshua brought it back from his trip to Copper Creek. Evangeline recognized Thomas's handwriting immediately. Her husband had finally written after months of silence. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and read, "Evangeline, I received word of the stagecoach attack from the territorial marshal. As you never arrived in Copper Ridge and no body was found, I have had you declared legally dead. This will simplify matters considerably, as I am planning to remarry in June. Margaret Hartwell has accepted my proposal, and her father's banking connections will be valuable to my practice. I assume you perished in the attack, but if by some miracle you survived, do not attempt to contact me. I have told everyone that you died heroically trying to reach the Cowra victims. It makes for a better story. Your former husband, Thomas Morrison, bad news?" Nathaniel asked, noting her pale expression. Evangeline handed him the letter without speaking. She watched his face change as he read, anger flashing in his eyes. "What kind of man abandons his wife like this?" he said, crumpling the paper. "And his own child, he doesn't know about Hope. I never had the chance to tell him I was pregnant. Would it have made a difference?" Evangeline considered the question honestly. "No, Thomas married me for practical reasons, not love. He wanted a respectable wife who could advance his career. A missing wife presumed dead serves his purposes better than a live one." With complications, Joshua emerged from the cabin, having heard their conversation. "The spirits have freed you from a bad choice. Now you can make a good one." "What do you mean?" "You have a new family here. A man who loves you, a child who needs a father, and a place where your healing skills are valued. Why would you return to a world that has rejected you?" Evangeline looked at Nathaniel, seeing the hope and fear warring in his expression. Over the winter, their relationship had deepened from friendship to something much stronger. He had been present for Hope's birth, had helped care for the baby during the difficult early weeks, and had become the father figure the child would never know. "Nathaniel," she said softly, "what do you want?" "I want you to stay," he said without hesitation. "Both of you. I know it's not proper, and I know you might not feel the same way about me, but I love you. Evangeline, I love Hope as if she were my own daughter. We could build a life together here. And if I say yes, what kind of life would we have? An honest one. We'd continue our medical practice, help the people in these mountains who need healing, raise Hope to understand both worlds, yours and Joshua's. Be happy." It was tempting, more tempting than Evangeline wanted to admit. The past months had been the happiest of her adult life, but there were practical considerations. "I'm still legally married, even if Thomas thinks I'm dead. And what about my medical degree? My career? Your medical degree means nothing to the miners and cowboys who need your help," Joshua observed. "Your skill and compassion mean everything. As for marriage, Apache law recognizes what the heart knows to be true." That evening, Evangeline sat by Hope's cradle, thinking about the choice before her. She could return to Denver, confront Thomas, and try to rebuild her old life. But that life had never truly been hers. It had been shaped by other people's expectations and demands, or she could stay here, in this hidden valley, with people who valued her for who she truly was. It would mean giving up the respectability of city life, but gaining something far more precious, a family built on love, rather than convenience. Her decision was made when Hope woke from her nap and smiled at her for the first time. It was a real smile, not just gas or reflex, and it was directed at Nathaniel, who was sitting nearby reading a medical journal. "Dada," Hope gurgled, reaching toward him with tiny fingers. Nathaniel's face lit up with pure joy. "Did you hear that? She called me Dada." "She did indeed," Evangeline said, making her choice. "And you are her father, in every way that matters." That night, under a canopy of stars, Nathaniel and Evangeline were married in a simple Apache ceremony conducted by Joshua. They exchanged vows of love and commitment, promising to heal the sick, protect each other, and raise hope with wisdom and compassion. By the laws of the Apache people and the witness of the spirits, you are husband and wife. Joshua pronounced, "May your union bring healing to the world." Dr. Evangeline Cross stood on the porch of the expanded cabin, watching her daughter play with a litter of puppies in the yard. Hope was now a bright 5-year-old who spoke both English and Apache fluently, and could identify dozens of medicinal plants by sight. The hidden valley was no longer quite so hidden. Word of the skilled healers had spread throughout the territory, and they now treated patients from as far away as Santa Fe and Tucson. They had built a proper medical clinic, complete with surgical facilities and a pharmacy stocked with both traditional medicines and Joshua's herbal remedies. "Mama, look," Hope called, holding up a puppy. "This one has different colored eyes, just like Joshua." Evangeline smiled, remembering when she first noticed that Joshua had one brown eye and one green eye. He claimed it was a gift from the spirits that allowed him to see into both the physical and spiritual worlds. Nathaniel emerged from the clinic, washing his hands after treating a cowboy's broken arm. "How's our patient doing?" "Billy Henderson will be fine. Clean break," said easily. "He'll be back to riding in 6 weeks." "Good. And how are you feeling?" He placed a gentle hand on her growing belly. Evangeline was pregnant again, due in the fall. This child had been planned and eagerly anticipated by the entire family. Hope was excited about becoming a big sister, and Joshua had already begun preparing special herbs for the birth. "Tired, but happy," she replied, leaning into her husband's embrace. "No regrets about the life we've chosen." Evangeline looked around at their mountain paradise, filled with the people and work she loved. "None whatsoever. This is where I belong." A rider appeared on the trail leading to their valley, another patient in need of healing. Nathaniel and Evangeline exchanged a look of understanding, then walked together toward the clinic to help whoever needed their care. Behind them, Hope continued playing with the puppies while Joshua tended his herb garden. The wind carried the sound of their laughter through the pines, a testament to the healing power of love and the family they had built together in their hidden valley. In the distance, an eagle soared over the mountain peaks, crying out in a voice that seemed to say, "All is well, all is as it should be." Now that you've watched the full story, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate it out of 10 in the comments. Your thoughts help us improve and ensure we're bringing you the kind of storytelling you truly enjoy.